Today we're going to discuss how to construct an investment portfolio, and I wanted to share with you guys the insights which I wish I had a decade ago. These are the principles that would have spared me hundreds of hours of excessive reading, and probably more importantly would have accelerated my clarity and confidence around investing and building out an investment portfolio. Here's what we'll cover: the objective of investing, how to choose the right mix of assets, the power of compound interest, and the risk and return curve, and what I personally invest in too. But before we dive into the video, guys, this video is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. When you're investing, your capital is at risk. This video is also sponsored by WisdomTree, but more on them a little bit later on in the video. Part 1, the objective of investing. Why commit capital to financial markets when a high yield savings account provides a safe and predictable return? The rationale lies in the long-term erosion of purchasing power and the opportunity cost of inaction. Let me explain a little bit more with a case study from Vanguard. The first reason on why it's important to invest is to make your money work harder for you. It's important to have sufficient cash savings in the case of an emergency. 3 to 6 months worth of monthly expenses is probably prudent, and generally the rule of thumb too. But spare money beyond this safety net, as Vanguard have stated, is where investing potentially offers a chance for greater growth over time, helping individuals reach their financial goals faster. The study also shows this chart, which shows an initial £10,000 invested in a globally diversified equity fund since 1998 outperformed cash by over 4 times, underscoring the important role that investing has to play to grow our wealth. The second reason that Vanguard have provided is that investing can help preserve spending power over time. For example, to buy £100 worth of goods in 1998, which was the year that this study began that we looked at, in today's money, it would cost you £191.23, meaning the purchasing power of just £1 has actually declined by nearly half in just the past 27 years. Now, based on the average inflation rate of the UK over the past 125 years, individuals arguably need to be increasing their wealth by about 3.5% per year just to keep up with that rate of inflation. If an individual isn't growing their wealth in line with that inflation rate, well, their real wealth will actually decline, meaning they'll actually become poorer because the cost of goods and services are going to continue to increase. It's that silent wealth killer that nobody really talks about, and that's what makes investing so important. And whilst there are obviously no guarantees with investing, in my mind, it's one of only kind of few ways that I can hope to put my money to work to kind of outpace the rate of inflation. But what exactly can we invest in and how do we go about doing it? Well, now let's dive into part 2, which is understanding your investments. One of the FCA's golden rules of investing is to understand your investments. And it's so true, right? Even Warren Buffett, who's one of the most famous investors on the planet, once said, "Never invest in a business that you don't understand." So if Warren Buffett and the FCA are telling us that it's important to understand what we're investing in, then it's probably important. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to investing, and the investment universe spans a wide risk to reward spectrum, from low volatility assets such as cash equivalents and sovereign bonds, to high volatility instruments like equities. And whilst there is, of course, lots of choice here, the most important thing to understand is what an investor's risk appetite is, and then building a portfolio mix that's very much aligned to that risk appetite. So let's talk a little bit more about the risk profiles of these individual asset classes, and we'll touch upon a little bit about historical performance to give you some more insights. But before we do that, first I wanted to demonstrate that risk versus return is actually a spectrum. I found this report called Understanding Investment Risk and Return, and in it they've shared this theoretical diagram to explain the concept. It shows lower risk investments will typically have lower returns, but also lower downside in unfavorable market conditions, versus a higher risk investment which may offer higher returns, but also potentially much higher downside too. Whilst this is certainly good conceptually, it is theoretical, and therefore it does have some limitations, because in reality, things can be quite different. And I'll show you that in just a moment's time. First, let's bring the risk versus return of different asset classes to life by talking a little bit more about historical returns. On screen, you can see the historical performance of a number of different asset classes and their respective rate of return from the best to the worst performer over the past 10 years. It's split across global equity markets, fixed income, cash, along with a blended portfolio of a 60-40 stock-bond split. So let's do a little bit of objective analysis here. You can see that North American equities have been the best performing asset 6 out of the last 10 years. Global equities have also been a consistent performer too, as you'd probably expect. Low risk assets typically perform better when equities aren't performing all too well, as we saw back in 2018 when cash and bonds were positive. But then on the flip side, everything else was pretty much negative for the year. But linking back to that theoretical concept of risk versus return and its limitations, ultimately all assets carry risk. If we look at the UK index-linked government bond returns in 2022, well, that asset class was down 34.5%. And this would usually be considered as a low-risk investment. This was as a result of the mini-budget from Liz Truss, which then kind of triggered a gilt crisis. This, however, is where theory and reality do contradict a little bit, because as you can see, the second worst performing asset over that 10-year period, which would traditionally be seen as a higher risk investment, was only down 10.3%, and it was emerging market equities back in 2015. So these things do swing in roundabouts a little bit, but there is arguably one area of consistency which is highlighted in red, which is the 60-40 portfolio, with a reduced risk and more stable returns, creating a less volatile investment portfolio. A 60-40 portfolio is kind of like the balanced diet, but for an investor. It doesn't mean it's the right diet because it might not be suitable for everybody, but it would be considered a balanced one. And next, I'd like to share how investing in some of these asset classes are helping me personally achieve my financial goals through the power of compound growth. But before we do that, I first wanted to introduce you guys to today's video sponsor, which is WisdomTree. WisdomTree is a global exchange-traded fund provider with over $100 billion in assets under management, and they offer a full range of ETFs and also provide a bunch of market analysis and white papers on different investment strategies and themes, which have been an interest for me personally as they help me to make content on this channel. After doing a recent video on gold and studying some of the WisdomTree content within the research paper, I've just finished reading the white paper on the 90-60 efficient core portfolio, which I've also found quite interesting too. The portfolio is based on a traditional 60-40 portfolio, which is a well-respected one in the investment space, and one that effectively balances risk and reward, as we've already discussed. But with the efficient core ETF, it aims to give investors 90% exposure to equities, plus 60% exposure to bonds through a leveraged position. This is interesting as it allows investors to diversify away from just a pure equity play with the addition of bonds, but with some leverage so the historical underperformance of bonds doesn't drag on overall portfolio returns. From WisdomTree's research, they claim that it outperforms a 100% US equity portfolio by 0.9% per year, whilst the volatility of the portfolio declines by nearly 3% based on backtested data between 1998 and 2023. There is a risk here though that if markets were to face an environment where both stocks and bonds were to provide negative returns for a sustained period of time, this could impact the overall fund performance versus that of a non-leveraged portfolio, with leverage obviously being a double-edged sword and all that. It's an interesting take though, and there are plenty other investing themes on here, which if you'd like me to cover any of them on this channel, then be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Thanks again to WisdomTree for sponsoring this segment of the video, and as always, investments carry risk, and that even goes for the most balanced of investments. Now let me move on to talk about how investing is helping me achieve my financial goals in part 3, which is compound interest. Again, we're going to talk hypothetical numbers here, but I wanted to share with you guys what the future value of an investment portfolio could look like if returns were compounded over a period of time. To do this, I'm going to use a compound calculator, and I'm going to model whether I invested £100, £250, £500 or £1,000 a month, increasing the deposit amount by 3% per year in line with inflation, and also assuming average rates of return from a US equity portfolio as taken from the Dimpson, Marsh and Staunton study, which is 125 years of average market returns from backtested data. And we're going to do this over a 30-year investing time horizon. Using nominal rates of return, these would be the portfolio values of each of these scenarios. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is to show the true power of compound growth, especially over a longer period of time. Whilst £100 a month might appear modest, its compounded trajectory over a multi-decade time horizon illustrates how incremental consistency, amplified by time, becomes a powerful force in wealth creation. It links to another one of those golden rules from the FCA, which is to think long term. Ideally 5 years or more. And of course, past performance isn't indicative of future results, but as it said in the report that we discussed, The best profit of the future is the past. And just logically speaking, we've got to put a stake in the ground somewhere in order to make some kind of assumptions about the future, even if they might not be 100% accurate. Hopefully I've demonstrated by this point why investing is so important for me personally. However, the next step is also just as important, which is part 4, diversification. Because as investors, we can of course diversify across different asset classes, as we've already discussed with the 60/40 portfolio. But you can also diversify within individual asset classes too. If we take just equities, for example, well, investors have a long list of options available. There are global equity trackers, single country trackers, single industry trackers, and much more. These are referred to as exchange traded funds, and they're typically a basket of stocks captured all with one single fund. But some investors might want to take a different route, and they might want to build out their investment portfolio by hand selecting individual stocks. And whilst that will certainly give an investor more control, there are some limitations. There is this concept called the risk curve, which suggests that risk and return don't necessarily increase in a straight line. There comes a point where adding equities to a portfolio doesn't meaningfully reduce your risk, and actually it can increase your exposure without providing you any additional rate of return. There are lots of different reports and studies on this, but one which I found and wanted to share with you is one called Stock Count and the Balance of Risk. And this chart shows the relationship between portfolio variance and stock count. It concludes that after having about 20 stocks in a portfolio, adding additional stocks to a portfolio after this point does not necessarily provide a greater benefit in risk reduction, where the study concludes that the upper limit of a portfolio's stock count should be 40 stocks, because beyond that point, the potential to achieve above average investment returns has substantially diminished. It's also far more difficult to hand select individual stocks, especially when there's many thousands of them available. As John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, once said, "Don't look for a needle in a haystack." And that's because 90% of active fund managers just simply fail to beat their benchmark index fund, which ultimately has led me down the path of investing into low-cost, well-diversified exchange-traded funds with an investment time horizon of 20 or 30 years. And if you want to come on that journey with me, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. But before you go, YouTube thinks that you might enjoy watching this video next, so be sure to click on that now. That being said, I'll see you over in the next one.